We've got this from Harvard, actually. It's the Harvard Youth Poll. And this story is big because Gen Z is largely giving up. What they find is that Gen Z has defined their generation by financial, political, and interpersonal instability. It's a defining feature of daily life, shaping their outlook on the country and their own futures. And right now, 57% of Gen Z think the country is on the wrong track. This includes younger conservatives who are not pro-Trump. Not all of these guys are groypers, but certainly those that are not in favor of what Trump is doing. So what does this country look like with 80 million, well, it's about 78 million Gen Z who don't like Trump, they don't like Democrats? What does that become in 10 years when these people are going to be in their late 30s? They're going to be going into their 40s in 10 years. Right now, I think what oldest Gen Z is about 27, 28 years old. So this is... They are entering the peak of their lives where they should have families and homes. And what are they doing? Living with their parents?
Will you ever have a young generation that agrees with the government? I think it's a very natural evolvement of people in this kind of age group where they just have to be contrarians and they don't like what's going on in the government. I think as they grow naturally into more conservative values and starting to think about having a family and actually being more comfortable in life and asking for more security and stable living conditions, that often makes them more united in a more conservative fashion. So I think it's this kind of rebellious phase in a way. I also understand why they do feel so insecure. I mean, the economy is terrible, and that has a huge impact, especially on the younger generations. And as soon as they feel that these issues, especially those who are tending more towards the left, they're asking for higher taxes because it doesn't impact them. They don't have to worry about it. So I think these issues, I think they will tend more towards the middle as they grow older. But at the same time, like I mentioned before, they will form their own movement, but it doesn't necessarily have to be completely opposite to what Trump is currently promoting or what we stood for during the time that we have been promoting the right for the past years. I think it's going to repeat itself or at least rhyme itself with what we were promoting. So I don't think it's something that we have to be scared of. I think it's more something where we have to guide the younger generation. I would like to be more of a voice for the younger generation rather than somebody who condemns them and demonizes them.
Right, but the problem is the Trump administration needs to win, or I shouldn't say the Trump, Republicans win elections in the United States through older voters. Younger voters, not only is the younger demographic smaller than the older demographic because people weren't having kids, but the older demographic is more likely to vote in general. So you've got two problems. If you go to the boomers, which is going to be the most active voting bloc for 2026, and say, we need to get the price of homes down, they're going to go, whoa, 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 that's where all my money is.
Yeah.
If my home goes down in value, I lose my retirement. If you go out and say, we're going to make the prices of homes go up, then the young people are like, well, I'm screwed. And I think that's the move they're making. Politicians in the United States are basically saying, always favor the old. Social Security can never be touched. Young people are saying, I'm being taxed into oblivion and I have no money and I don't get that. Don't let prices drop on houses because old people the boomers have three houses. Not all of them, but around 75% of boomers own homes and many of them own more than one. So it's always going to favor this. And they're going to live longer. So Gen Z, I think that's why we see this data. They're basically saying, you have built a system to extract from us, and we will never see that value again.
Yeah, it's the wages have stopped going up. There's a stagnation when it comes to the way that they can make money. And then they've taken out $200,000 in student loan debt, which then pushes them back into favor of the government. Even if you're pushing back against the government now, the government has found a way to reinstitute itself in your life no matter what, even if you're successful, even if you get a job making a good amount of money, you're still in debt slavery. There's no way out.
Indeed. So when I see this and they say interpersonal instability, you've got social media apps that are destroying social interaction. You've got a financial crisis going back to COVID. I mean, technically even before that when they were little kids. And they can't own homes.
I don't think any of this is a condemnation of Gen Z. I don't. I think it's most people now, especially millennials, they look at what's happening to Gen Z and they're like, I can absolutely see, because we saw the beginning of that with the financial crisis in 2008. It's like people talk a lot about how people in these spaces condemn Gen Z. I don't think that's what it is. I think most people look at the nihilism that's coming from a lot of American Gen Zs and they say that makes perfect sense to me. But it feels in a lot of ways like they feel like it was orchestrated by the government post 2008 to actually create the situation that we're in now.
Yeah, I mean, look, the government is responsible for a significant portion of this, whether it be the incentivizing people that didn't have the funds or the credit rating to buy homes before the housing market crash, or the way that they've handled the economy since. They spent 10 years just printing money, doing quantitative easing, which is the main driver of income inequality that people feel. They feel like they don't have as much money, and they feel like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and they generally are, because when you print up money, rich people get access to that money first. They can borrow against either their home or what have you, and they can invest that money in the stock market, which is why the stock market has gone up so dramatically in the past 10 years. They borrowed money at a super low rate, put the money in the stock market, made themselves a bunch of money. And then if you have, people that are poor or don't have anything, if they get their hands on money, the first thing they're doing is trying to pay bills, pay for their groceries. And where does that money go? It goes to the people that own the grocery stores. It goes to the people that own things. So this wealth transfer that we've seen in the past 10, 15 years, it's all because of government policy.
And COVID too.
Pardon me?
The wealth transfer over COVID too.
Yeah, but COVID was the same thing. It's like people got, if when the government just printed up money and they gave it to people that didn't have any kind of assets or whatever, they spent that money. And where did that money go? Again, it went to Jeff Bezos because they were buying things on Amazon. So if you get free money from the government, and even if Jeff Bezos doesn't get it, the billionaires get it anyways because they're the ones that own things, and you're going to buy the services and products that they're selling.
And not even just like people that own businesses. It was the billionaires, because your mom and pop shops were shut down.
Yep.
And you were only allowed to get stuff from Walmart or from Amazon.
Yeah.
A never-ending problem in politics is that it's just naturally not future-oriented, because you're only going to be in office for so long, so it's not a delayed gratification type of industry at all. And I think that's going to upset a lot of young people who maybe some of them are not even voters yet, and maybe some of them are just starting to vote, but they are just in the minority out of all the voters. And that typically draws them more towards the left, I think, because they're going to get very frustrated if we don't interact with them. So I think something that would be very important for us, like as a community, as a society, would be to promote more future thinking. And I guess the most important person who has been doing this for the past years is Elon Musk, who thinks very far ahead, who thinks about us going to Mars in the very far future. I think that's a bit too far for politics. But generally just promoting more family values, and also for older people, or even just our generation, honestly, to think about the future generations, which are our children, and creating more of this community between younger generations and older generations again, because I think currently there's actually a big age war in politics.
Well, yeah, I see in the United States, when we point out that boomers, 75% own homes, and many of those people own multiple homes, they get angry. Not all boomers, but we'll get a lot of responses being like, don't blame us. I worked for it and I deserve it. I've heard from tons of boomers and they say, hey, I worked for my Social Security. I deserve it. And it's just like, yes, but in order to pay for it, like you paid someone else. And Gen Z is now working to pay you, and Gen Z is never going to see that money.
And those boomers that have multiple homes, they locked in an interest rate of 2-3%. And now if you want to go buy a home, it's going to be 6-7%. And that's a huge amount of money over the course of a 30-year loan. So the idea that people, the boomers are like, oh, don't be mad at me, blah, 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 blah. I mean, look, you're going to have people saying this is not fair. This is not fair that I can't afford a home, that I can't get that interest rate that you got. You got this super sweet deal because the government was doing everything they can to keep interest rates down and keep them low because they were pumping up the stock market. And again, you can't stress this enough. They did it for 10 years. You had super, super low interest rates. And then COVID came, and because of the inflation with COVID, they had to jack up the interest rates. And like young people are totally screwed because of this.
Mm-hmm. And boomers need to relax on their nihilism. Like they need to start caring. We need to start caring because we have under 30% of under 30-year-olds. 8% of people are leaning Republican. They're not into the Republican Party. They don't care about it. So the old folks, boomers who have the money, you guys need to start thinking about you're going to die. What are you gonna do with your money? You're gonna die. So you need to start caring about what the young kids and give them opportunities and just show them that you care. That we might get more folks who are going to come to Republican.
I'm not sure exactly how you do that though. Like what is it that boomers are supposed to do to indicate care? And first of all, what are they supposed to do to indicate that they care? Second of all, right? Like what is it that they could materially do to help young people? You know, I mean, it's if they've got a mortgage at a low rate and they're trying to rent it out, but young people don't have the money to rent it out. They still have a mortgage that they have to cover. They can't go ahead and be like, well, I'll lose money on my, or at least they're not going to say, I'll lose money on my rental property, so that way you have a place to live.
Even the system that they were born into doesn't really exist anymore because they went to college for much cheaper, but that's not their fault that they went to college for much cheaper. And now, because the government got involved in student loans, the price of going to college has been jacked up exponentially, and there's no way for the newer generations to actually feasibly have a good life, because if there are a lot of these companies now, they've been sold off to major corporations which put ridiculous rules in place for how people are hired, and people just get they get basically removed from the job market entirely, whether it's through H-1B visas or the fact that you need to have 5 years experience for an entry-level job and stuff like that. It's literally designed to fail, but that isn't necessarily the fault of the generation that came before them, other than the ones who sold their companies to larger companies, which then put these rules into place. You don't see a lot of things in the way of, paid like internships or mentoring programs in the same way that they used to. It doesn't work that way anymore. And then millennials or Gen Z get angry when a boomer says to you, you know what, go up to him and shake his hand and look him in the eye and hand him your resume and make sure it's printed out on good card stock and stuff like that. It's not really their fault that advice doesn't work anymore, but it just further kind of reinforces the divide between all the generations.
And it's a double-edged sword nowadays for young people, because young people are doing more staying at home. They don't interact with people. They don't have social skills the way that that people did generally 20, 30, 40 years ago. And one of the most effective ways to find a job is knowing people, networking with people. Yeah. So if you're not very charismatic, you can't hold a conversation with someone, you don't know where to go to meet people, you don't have particularly good interpersonal skills, and you have to have your mom come with you to your interview, right? And you're not going to get the job. You're just not. And if you don't know a lot of people, opportunities are going to slip by. And so one of the best advice you can give to young people is to break out of that kind of the cycle of staying home, not going out, not meeting people. And as distasteful as it might seem, go to job fairs. And even if they're not jobs that you're particularly interested in, the more you're out among people and talk to people, the better your chances of finding some kind of job. And people are going to go ahead and poo-poo that idea. But I tell you what, it's a way better idea than sitting at home on social media and scrolling through TikTok, because you're not going to find any work on your couch.
It's an even better idea than going to college. And I mean that genuinely. I do not encourage anyone in there, who just graduated from high school, to go to college now. And I say that as someone, I graduated with the highest degree the highest grade that you can get in high school in Germany. And in Germany, it's even more standardized that you kind of have to go to university. Otherwise, you're kind of a failed person and you don't make it at all in Germany. And everybody told me you have to go to university because otherwise you're wasting your great grades. And I hated it. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to university. This was my dream in middle school. And then after high school, I realized this is just the same, honestly, horrible system. It's just it failed so many young people. And now people are getting out of college who just went in the past years, and now they're realizing, oh, AI is taking over, so my degree is useless now. So what am I going to do now? So you need to be in tune with what's currently happening in the entire job world, and you cannot live in the real world while you're going to college or university. And it's a big problem. I think you need to be updated in everything that's going on social media, in the media, and understand what actually matters to the world, because the whole idea of becoming an entrepreneur is you need to understand what are the real problems of people, so you can solve them. You need to make yourself useful. By going to college, you're just seeking good grades in something that nobody cares about. Nobody cares about your grades. You have to be useful to society.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. The idea that you're owed a job, or that just because of your existing, in the United States, you should be able to find a job. You need to be useful. That's a great point.
This is a challenge for Gen Z, and every generation, except for I think Gen X, had some great challenge. Although to be fair, I think Gen X had, with the financial crisis hitting them right at like the peaks of their careers, many losing a lot of what they worked for. You can see the charts on corporate equities and home ownership when the 2008 crash happened. Gen X got eviscerated. And but that being said, I was talking about this earlier with this great clip from Fight Club where Brad Pitt's character says that there's, Tyler Durden, we have no great war, we have no great struggle or whatever. Every generation has some kind of struggle, and Gen Z has this one right now. The question is, are they going to rise to the challenge, and how will they do it? Are they going to go leftist and say, just tax everybody and burn it down, I'll extract what I can from these people? Or are they going to be I'm going to go out and find my own way within the system?
I don't think that's what it is. I don't think I don't think that the educational system that they've been raised on teaches people to actually create jobs for themselves. It mostly teaches you to be a worker for somebody else. Not everybody has the desire to be an entrepreneur, to go out and create the economy for themselves. Now, that's possible that eventually, if it comes to that and there's no other options, kind of feet held to the fire, maybe that ends up being what happens to you. But most people aren't entrepreneurs. They're people that work best going into a job, and most people seek out the security of having a job rather than creating money for themselves.
It reminds me of something that Asmongold says a lot. There are some people that are born to take big rocks and make them into smaller rocks. And that's about all they can do.
I was at this local politician party a long time ago, and there was some wealthy dude there who said, some people, someone has to work at McDonald's, and that's how a lot of these people view the world. The issue is right now McDonald's doesn't pay enough so that you can live a life. And it used to be that working at McDonald's was something a 16-year-old did, and then it was a summer job where you got paid a little bit, saved up money, but lived with your parents. And then when you got older and got out of high school, you got a trade or a better job. But I think the system that we've built over the last 100 years is a lie. It used to be that you learned from your parents, and then we industrialized this system, and then we tried to institutionalize this system with college, but some people are just meant to turn big rocks into small rocks. They're never going to learn how to run computer systems or run businesses. And how do you then navigate this system? I honestly don't know.
Well, it's like when you hear entrepreneurs talk about the business, they talk about it's an obsession of theirs, right? They think about it every minute of every day. It's the most important thing in the world to them. And it oftentimes will end up being to the detriment of other avenues of their life. And most people just don't have that in them to live that way. I know that's not the way that I see the world, right? Like, it would be very hard for me to live that way. So I can't condemn people because they're not built in a way that's designed to to live your life like that, when most people aren't. But we are slowly moving towards a world where that's what's going to happen. Now, you could say that the creator economy on social media has actually created mini entrepreneurs out of people in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the ones who go out and they work for themselves by making social media content. That is a form of industriousness that's probably more natural to them than it is to prior generations.
Yeah, I mean, but not everybody can make content that's,
that's my point.
This is the it goes for every job, right? Not everyone can do every job out there. It's like, it goes back to the thing we talk about where people are not just cogs that you can replace one person and have them do the same exact job as someone else. But it is worth saying that, the people that find some kind of niche that they're good at, people that go out and try a bunch of different things, those are the people that are most likely to be successful, at least to some degree.
Well, you've actually said that here when we talk about hiring for these types of shows, right? You said most of the people, it's very hard to hire people to do on-camera stuff because most people, if they can do it, they're going to do it on their own because they're built that way.
Well, right now, I just think Gen Z is a generation that has been raised in with the least education, I think is the way I'd put it. So I think this is not a condemnation of any individual, but I think the people who raised Gen Z, which is largely Gen X, did not instill within their children an understanding of the world, how to make money, how to operate, and worse than the previous generations before. Millennials are really, really bad. Gen Z isn't necessarily as bad. They may be very similar to millennials, but millennials are really bad too. Constantly complaining, voting for communists. And every generation before is to blame. You know, it's funny when people say they want to repeal the 19th Amendment, and I'm like, blame the politicians back then who allowed it. I mean, every generation has committed some kind of political act that resulted in where we are today. And I think this is a natural ebb and flow. Hard times make strong men. Strong men make good times make weak men make hard times. Strauss out generational theory. Saddle up, boys, because it's about to get a whole lot worse. There are way too many young people who don't know what to do. Not that it's their fault. Society was supposed to help them understand. And instead of teaching the next generation how to take over, they're flooding the country with immigrants, making it impossible. So the whole thing is just going to go tits up. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.